Chapter 4. Inside its large white casing at the front gate of the Federation outpost, a motor grumbled to life, spitting out short and rapid sputter of hot rainbow-colored flames in interesting patterns from its hexagonal exhaust matrix before humming into smooth operation. The motor revved up, and the outpost's huge front gates made a deep subsonic rumble as they slid smoothly open, allowing the massive, hovering landship to float silently and brightly into the outpost. The big vehicle flooded its lights onto the dark troops and buildings, casting long, passing sunset shadows as it noiselessly breezed its way through the base before coming to a gentle stop in the central assembly area. The jet bikes came whining in behind this time, each pulling to a stop along one side of the landship. The bikes' repulsor carriages winked out, leaving only the moon, a few red lights on the walls of nearby buildings, and the flood from the underside of the big vehicle to light the deeply shadowed outpost. Then, after the jet engines had whined down and the front gate had rumbled closed, the big motor in its white casing wound down to leave just the rattle and clatter of troop activity to punctuate the constant ringing of the jungle night. Jennifer climbed down the extended ladder exit on the side of the ship and jumped to the ground. The driver did the same on the other side. They met around the front, both standing on the black top of the assembly yard in the humid night, both bathed in the warm sunset of the landship's repulsors. The driver looked around at the expansive yard. She pointed her opaque lenses out to the outposts surrounding fences. Pretty blinding big outpost for being in the middle of nowhere, wouldn't you say? The far perimeter fences were solid, taller than most of the buildings, and matte black, with walkways along the tops. Jennifer nodded appreciatively. This is practically a base. A tall man with heavy, almost muscular brow, a broad nose, and a thick black and white forest of a beard, strolled out of the darkness to address them in a warm, strong voice. It's an outpost, not a base. At least officially. He smiled, his full mouth flashing big teeth at Jennifer. Jennifer's eyes grew wide. Ryan! She jumped and gave the man a spontaneous hug. Releasing the big guy, she took a step back and held out her hands. Surprise! Watching through her glasses with an easy smile, the driver saluted. Major Wilder, sir. Ryan turned and returned the driver's salute. Corporal Jones, good to see you again. The corporal nodded. Yes, sir. Since you're here, she offered Ryan a small rectangular chip. As stated on the transparency, PFA cargo ship cutter is reporting in, unload initiated, scheduled to depart in 3. We should be done well before sunrise, sir. Ryan took the chip from the corporal and, holding it between his left thumb and forefinger, brought it up to his face. Instantly, the chip vanished, and he held the bottom corner of a transparent rectangular sheet. The see-through sheet Ryan now held was covered in silvery writing, each line of the flowing script followed by a small neon ruby square, each bright crimson box filled in with a cobalt scrawlings or a check mark, a form. Ryan's eyes scanned over the report as he reached into his vest and withdrew a small, soft-bound portfolio. The sheet vanished, turning back into a chip pinched between his fingers. Using his free pinky and ring finger to open the zipper, he slid the chip into a soft slot within the portfolio. Nicely done, Corporal Jones, as usual. He zipped the book lit closed and placed it back inside his jacket. So, how was the drive? We just cut that new road out of the jungle last night. Jones smirked. Drive was great, sir. The company was a little boring. She lifted her opaque glasses and winked at Jennifer. Now, if you two kids would excuse me, I've got some more transparencies to tick off before we kick off. The driver dropped her glasses back down onto her nose and walked away backwards, pointing at Jennifer. Hey, shiny girl, make sure you're back here at 06 or we're leaving without you. It doesn't matter to me that you're a torch. I don't even care if you got a request from the commander himself. I'm out. I've got a schedule to keep, and I'm never late. Ryan raised a big smile in his thick beard. Really, Jones? You would ignore a request from me? His heavy eyebrows dropped behind his opaque lenses. The driver smirked, raising her chin to Ryan before saluting, then turning away. Ryan smiled and shook his head, then turned his opaque lenses to stare up at the big looming landship. You're amazing, you know that? He dropped his gaze from the vehicle back to Jennifer. You managed to swing a ride on a Class A landship just to come say hi. Jennifer raised her eyebrows. It wasn't so hard. You know how the system works. Her smile faltered. But Ryan took off his glasses to reveal his bright, deep-set eyes, sparkling behind dark, heavy eyelids. But you didn't come here to say hi. He tucked his glasses into his chest pocket, his friendly, solid face a mix of kind curves and strong angles. Did you, Jen? He gave her a knowing look. She looked away. No, Ryan. I came to say goodbye. Ryan made the face of someone who had just lost a bet, then dropped his head. That's twice you've left me now. He tilted his head slightly, still holding his pained expression. You realize that, right? He glanced up at her, one thick eyebrow raised. Jennifer shot Ryan a hurt look. That is not fair. I did not leave you the first time. She poked a finger into his broad chest. We left Vectus together. So don't try to say I left you. I went to the Republic instead of following you here to the Federation. I kept up the fight, just... She looked at her hands. Just not with light. Ryan clenched his jaw. Jen, I'm sorry. I didn't need to say that. I didn't mean... She turned away, cutting him off. No, Ryan, I'm sorry. You're right about this time. This time, I will be leaving the fight. She stared up at the looming landship and the stars above it. And so this time, I will be leaving you. A clamor of booted footsteps pounded the blacktop, and leaders shouted orders as troops from around the outpost streamed in to stand in formation around the back of the landship, bathed in the light of the huge vehicle's repulsors. The landship's wide rear door cracked open from the top, hinging and lowering slowly down to the ground to function as a broad, thick ramp. Then, after the rear ramp hit the ground with a wide and deep thud, 3 more doors opened on each side of the big cargo vehicles, ramps from each of those lowering down to meet the blacktop with smaller, but still solid, thuds. Jennifer stood there next to the commander as the troops began to unload the landship. Scattered troops still streaming in around them, like leaves on a river flowing around a rock. I'm just not a fighter. Not really. Not by nature, Ryan. He looked at her, outlined silver by the moonlight, a silhouette against the sunset flood of the looming landship. But Jen, you are a fighter. He took a step towards her, and we need fighters. With glints of dim red from the loading bay lights in her short hair, Jennifer turned to look at Ryan with a story in her eyes. With a firm jaw, he shared the gaze. Then, with a long inhale and a slow exhale, he nodded. The Vectans, when they take all you lightmakers as kids and forge you into fighters... He squinted his eyes, 2 sparkling lines burning in the shadow of his great brow. Such incredible, effective fighters. But he blinked and puffed out a dismissive sound. He patted her on the shoulder. They made you into a good fighter, Jen, but you were not meant to be a fighter. Then, with a warm smile, he gave her shoulder a firm squeeze. So, when do you leave? My liner leaves in 2 days, but I have to catch a shuttle out of Namu tomorrow. Jennifer looked at the stars. I'm going to the Union. The Union? Ryan tilted his head and lowered his substantial brow. Jennifer raised her eyebrows and nodded. Yes, the Union. Ryan scratched his thick curly beard, looking at her through relaxed eyes. I'm not going to ask why, but I am going to ask how. I mean, between the Republic's utter collapse and the Union absorbing all those worlds and The waiting line for immigration into the Union must stretch between the galaxies. Jennifer held up her hand, thumb to middle finger, and snapped. A small burst of sparks rained out from her hand, lighting her face and body as the sparks fell to the ground, curling and spinning off to fade away. She held out her hands, tilted at the wrist. Ta-da! She dropped her hands to her sides. It works every time, Ryan. Ryan's thick, dark eyelids fell shut. Even in the great Union, where everyone is supposedly equal, he shook his head slowly. With a soft sigh, Jennifer nodded weakly. Yes, Ryan, just like everywhere else in the universe, even in the fair and equal Union, lightmakers are more equal than others. Ryan gave a quick sigh, then hefted a smile and looked at Jennifer, warmth twinkling in his eyes. Life's not fair, but that's lucky. He pointed a finger at her and winked. If you're lucky. Jennifer's own smile rose at this, then sagged, a distant look growing in her eyes. I don't feel so lucky. Look, Ryan, I have to do this. Ryan's strong yet friendly voice interrupted her. Jen, let's stop standing here justifying ourselves in the dark. I haven't seen you in years, and chances are that we'll never see each other again. I'll tell you what. He leaned in close to Jennifer. And don't tell anybody yet. They'll find out in a few hours after you guys leave. But we just got a whole pallet of chalk sugar this morning. Chalk sugar, Jen. Jennifer's eyebrows shot up. Chalk sugar? You got supplies from the Union. Ryan chuckled. Hey, I said keep it quiet, at least for now. That's not all they gave us, but the Union still isn't an official Federation ally. Not yet. Not that I've heard of, officially at least, so I haven't reported this to HQ. I actually can't. Jennifer tilted her head. You can't? Why? Ryan made a face like he was remembering an old debt. He glanced sidelong at Jennifer. Because the Union delivered that stuff through a special and indirect channel. Jennifer eyed him. What does that mean? Ryan pressed on her back again, hurrying her along. All in good time, Jen. First, I have to take care of something in the loading bay. Then, we're going to get some food. Then, we can talk about the whole Union situation. And that's the end of Chapter 4.